Paris, 1925. The air is thick with the scent of jazz and damp cobblestones. Behind the closed doors of one of the city's most luxurious hotels, a meeting is underway. 6 of the most influential scrap metal dealers in the country have been summoned to a highly confidential negotiation by a high-ranking government official. The topic on the agenda? The fate of a national icon, a topic too sensitive to be spoken of aloud. An invitation embossed with the French Republic's seal. A packet of banknotes exchanged under the table. The shadow of the Eiffel Tower's iron lattice falling across the documents. Every detail is impeccable, every word measured.
The official makes his shocking proposition. The government has secretly decided to dismantle the tower. The costly repairs are deemed pointless, but public outcry must be avoided at all costs. This operation requires absolute secrecy. The men are offered a deal they cannot refuse, a deal they will never be able to tell their wives, their partners, or the police about, because at its heart lies a state secret or a brilliant lie.
Weeks later, one of these men will be sitting in his office. He will be holding the contract of sale. He will be staring at his own signature, and he will not dare to make a single phone call. The call to the police, because he wasn't bought with money. He was bought out with his own greed. This is the story of a man who tested the limits of those who seemed to have everything. A man who sold thin air and made his victims say thank you. His name was Victor Lustig, and this is System Breaks. He appeared as if from nowhere. In the haze of train stations and port cities of old Europe, the impeccable figure of Count Victor Lustig materialized. Impeccably polite, fluent in 5 languages, smelling of expensive perfume and money. But he was no count. His real name was Robert Lustig. He was born in 1890 in Bohemia, the son of a respected burgomaster, the mayor of the town of Hostine. He had every opportunity to live a respectable life, but from a young age he was drawn not to stability, but to the game, a high-stakes game where the cards were marked and the dice were loaded. His first university was the transatlantic liners, the floating palaces shuttling between the old and new worlds. Here, in smoky gaming salons, among the nouveau riche and aristocrats, he honed his first and main weapon, the ability to read people. He studied not the cards, but the player's eyes. He searched not for a winning combination, but for a weakness, greed, vanity, the desire to seem more significant than one is. It was here, amid the clanking of glasses and the rustle of banknotes, that Count Lustig was born. He understood a fundamental truth. An expensive suit and impeccable manners unlock any door and remove any suspicion. People see what they want to see. They believe not facts, but the image, and he was a master at creating the right image. By the 1920s, he was already a virtuoso of his craft. He didn't just deceive, he created multi-layered illusions, entire worlds that his victims were all too willing to believe in. He was the director, and the whole world was his stage, and he was already looking for his masterpiece, the role that would forever inscribe his name in history. And he found it. It was a 300-meter-tall metal tower soaring over Paris. Paris in 1925 lived to the rhythm of jazz and Art Deco, but its main symbol was in trouble. The Eiffel Tower, built as a temporary structure for the World's Fair, was rapidly rusting. Newspapers were filled with articles about the exorbitant costs of its maintenance, and in the corridors of power, the option of demolition was seriously discussed. It was the perfect flaw in the system, and Lustig saw it. He arrived in Paris under the guise of a high-ranking official. He booked a room at the Hôtel de Crillon, one of the most expensive and exclusive addresses in the capital. This wasn't just a gesture of luxury, it was a key element of trust. The place dictated status. Then he sent out invitations to 6 of the greediest and least scrupulous scrap metal dealers. The envelopes, bearing government seals, summoned them to an urgent and strictly confidential meeting at the Crillon. The very format of the meeting weeded out the skeptics. Only those who truly believed in their own exclusivity and thirsted for the big game showed up. When they had all gathered in the luxurious office, Lustig, dressed in an impeccable suit, made his move. With deadly seriousness, he announced the shocking news to the assembled men. The government had secretly decided to demolish the Eiffel Tower. The costly repairs had been deemed impractical. The best minds in the country were against it, so the operation was being conducted in the strictest secrecy to avoid public outrage. Those gathered had the honor of participating in an auction for the right to dispose of 10,000 tons of first-class steel. To crush any remaining doubts, Lustig arranged a showcase inspection. He loaded the potential buyers into an official limousine and, with an important air, gave them a tour at the foot of the tower, pointing with a knowledgeable look at the dilapidated structure and rotten beams. He played the role of a bureaucrat, tired of red tape, eager to quickly solve a nagging problem. But the main psychological blow was delivered in a private conversation. Lustig singled out the most insecure and recognition-hungry among them, André Poisson. He skillfully hinted that such a large government tender didn't happen without certain commissions, unofficial bonuses for the official handling this delicate matter. It was a genius move. For Poisson, the bribe became not proof of a scam, but on the contrary, confirmation of the deal's authenticity. He realized he was dealing not with a saint, but with a colleague in big business who solved problems the adult way. His last doubts dissolved. The next day, Lustig received an envelope from him, first with the bonus, and then the entire fee for the metal. The sum was astronomical. Without saying goodbye, the official boarded the first train to Vienna, leaving Poisson to await the start of the demolition, which was never meant to begin. The humiliation of realizing his own greed and stupidity was so profound that the stunned businessman never went to the police. The victim's silence became the final chord of the perfect crime. But how do you play your game when the man sitting across the table is the owner of Chicago himself? When your potential partner is not a judge, but the Supreme Court, and his verdict is not subject to appeal? Victor Lustig's answer would be, you must play by his rules. And Al Capone's main rule was simple. Betrayal is punishable by death. Lustig was no suicide. Stealing from Capone meant signing his own death warrant. So he devised a move that was brilliant in its reverse logic.
He came to the gangster not to cheat him. He came to impress him as the most honest man in Illinois. His proposal was standard, a big scam with counterfeit securities requiring $50,000 to start. Capone, skeptically sizing up the elegant con man, nevertheless gave him the money, not out of trust, but out of curiosity. He was giving him a kind of loan with interest payable in lead. Lustig took the money, but instead of disappearing or putting it to use, he simply locked it in a safe. And for 2 months, he vanished from the sight of the most dangerous man in America. He just waited. He understood that Capone had already decided he'd been duped, that his anger was simmering. 2 months later, Lustig appeared before Capone again. He didn't come with double the money. He came with apologies. With theatrical sadness, he threw up his hands. The plan had fallen through at the last moment. Circumstances had been stronger. And without waiting for the rage, he returned the envelope, all $50,000, to the last cent. He looked at the stunned gangster and said, "I gave you my word, and I did everything I could. I'm sorry it didn't work out." In Capone's world, a world of betrayals and double crosses, such an act was so unbelievable that it provoked not anger, but respect. Capone, accustomed to being feared, had encountered a man who had not cheated him.
It was this demonstrative honesty that became Lustig's real profit. Impressed, Capone not only let him go, he counted out $5,000 for him, not for the job, but for the effort, for proving to be the one nobody expected to find in their circle, a man of his word. Lustig didn't steal. He earned, trading Capone's money for something far more valuable, his trust and his own life. It was the most profitable and most risky deal of his career.
But even the king of con men had his crown jewels, and the most brilliant of them was not a scam, but a machine, a mysterious contraption that seemed to be able to print money. But in reality, it printed something far more valuable: blind, greedy belief. The device that Lustig and his accomplice peddled to trusting wealthy men was a masterpiece of engineering illusion. On the outside, a complex construction of brass and steel with gears, levers, and 2 slots. On the inside, a carefully hidden compartment where 2 or 3 genuine $100 bills were preloaded.
The demonstration was staged like a magic trick. Lustig would ask the victim to provide their own bill to eliminate any suspicion. The banknote was placed into the machine. The apparatus would hum and click, beginning its work. For 6 long hours, it was aligning the molecular structure of the paper and ink, as Lustig would explain with a grave air. This pause was critical. It created an aura of scientific complexity and gave the grifters time to prepare their escape. After the allotted time, a perfect, crisp $100 bill would emerge from the second slot. In reality, it was one of the bills preloaded into the machine. The victim, however, saw a miracle. Their own money had not been spent, but doubled.
Then came the main offer: to sell the machine itself for a huge sum, usually $30,000. The victim, having already seen the result and intoxicated by future riches, eagerly agreed. Lustig would warn them, "The process is very complex. Printing more often than every 6 hours would break the machine." This was the final genius touch, preventing the victim from immediately starting to print money and discovering the deception. The buyer was left with a useless box full of gears and empty promises, while Victor Lustig melted into the night with their real, hard-earned cash. He wasn't selling a money-printing machine. He was selling a dream. And it turned out that this dream cost far more than any piece of hardware in the world. Even the most perfect system fails.
For Victor Lustig, that failure came not from the vigilance of the authorities, but from a simple human emotion: jealousy. His longtime accomplice and lover, Billy May, upon learning of his affair with another woman, took a desperate step. She called the Federal Bureau of Investigation and turned him in, detailing the workings of the money machine. On May 10, 1935, the luck that had long favored the con man ran out. FBI agents arrested him on a street in New York City. They found $51,000 on him, the proceeds from his most recently duped client. It seemed the game was over, but Lustig thought otherwise.
He was placed in the Federal Detention House in Manhattan, considered one of the most secure. A cell on the 9th floor. Iron bars, armed guards. For anyone else, this would have been the end. But for a man who had spent years picking the most complex psychological locks, iron bars were just another puzzle to solve. He noticed a ventilation grate in his cell leading to a service corridor. Its fastenings were old. Using a makeshift tool, he spent night after night loosening the bolts. From sheets and blankets, he braided a sturdy rope. It said he studied a book on maritime knots, either found in the prison library or passed to him by an accomplice. On the night of June 10, just hours after his arrest, he squeezed through the narrow opening, emerged into the corridor, and, tying his rope to a pipe, rappelled down the prison wall to freedom. It was the only successful escape from that fortress in its entire history. For 27 days, he was a fugitive. His face now graced newspapers and FBI wanted posters. The entire federal machinery was hunting him. He was recaptured in Pittsburgh. Legend has it that while searching his room, an agent found that very book on maritime knots, a ready guide for the next escape that would never happen. The illusions were over.
His final stage was not a cozy Parisian hotel room, but a cell in the world's most infamous penitentiary, Alcatraz. Inmate number 15164. They did not convict him for selling the Eiffel Tower. French justice never reached him, but for the mundane crimes of forgery and fraud related to the money machine. The court sentenced him to 20 years. Even here, in a stone cage amid the icy waters of the bay, he tried to maintain his legend. He was quiet, somewhat aloof, keeping to himself. To the other inmates, he was an enigma, an elegant ghost from another world whose crimes were too sophisticated for them to understand. He didn't steal, he didn't rob. He made people willingly hand over their money. In a world of violence, his method seemed like magic. He worked in the prison laundry, and the toxic fumes from the chemicals slowly destroyed his lungs, already weakened by the damp prison air. By 47, he was gravely ill. Cancer and pneumonia were eating away at his last strength. In 1947, when he was on the verge of death, the prison authorities transferred him from the Rock to the infirmary at the prison on McNeil Island. Not out of mercy, it was simply easier to care for a dying man there. On March 9, 1947, Victor Lustig, a.k.a. the Count, a.k.a. Robert Miller, drew his last breath. He died in complete obscurity under an assumed name in a government ward. His tombstone was engraved, Robert V. Miller. Even in death, he preserved one of his many masks. The greatest deceiver departed quietly, never having revealed all his secrets. The story of Victor Lustig is more than just a collection of criminal anecdotes. It is a fundamental study of the nature of trust. His weapons were not lockpicks and guns, but psychology, acting, and a deep understanding of human weakness. He left behind not only legends, but also a peculiar user's manual for the manipulator.
the 10 commandments of the con man. Among them, be a patient listener, never look bored, and the key paradoxical principle, never be avaricious. But the most profound commandment stated, never try to cheat an honest man, always look for a crooked one. Lustig understood that it was much easier to deceive someone looking for easy money. His victims became accomplices in their own ruin. Their greed blinded them and drowned out the voice of reason.
In the modern world, where fraud has moved into the digital space, his methods are more relevant than ever. Phishing emails, calls from bank security services, investment sure things, they all work on the same principles as the sale of the Eiffel Tower. They exploit trust, create artificial urgency, and play on greed. Victor Lustig proved that the most secure system can be bypassed not by technical genius, but by finding a vulnerability in the human mind. His legacy is an eternal reminder. The most reliable shield against any deception is not a complex password, but a sober mind, skepticism, and control over one's own weaknesses. After all, in the end, we often deceive ourselves first, before anyone else does it for us.
Which of Lustig's tricks would you have fallen for? The brilliant legend you'd want to believe? The chance to beat the system and get what you want? Or the flattery and promise of belonging to an exclusive circle? Let us know in the comments which of his scams you think was the most brilliant and why. If you're fascinated by stories of how even the most robust systems, from human psychology to government institutions, get broken, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon. There are many more incredible stories coming your way. This has been System Breaks. Thanks for watching. Stay vigilant.